And this piece on this 5-star wide receiver, Dalen McCutcheon from Texas, just strikes me as like, this is normally a type of prospect that you would consider Ohio State lining up for, USC lining up for, maybe a Tennessee lining up for, or an LSU. And I'm just thinking, like, this is the type of recruit that if Michigan does want to hit that final 2 status, right, and that top 2 status alongside the Georgias of the world, this is the type of player that Michigan's going to have to go after. So what's your take on it?
Absolutely. And that's kind of what they've been missing. Now, it's not that they haven't gotten those types of prospects, just especially at the skill positions, when they've gotten them, they've tended to be the Donovan Peoples-Joneses of the world who are in state. They're a little bit easier to maybe coerce because it's like, hey, you know, we're right down the road and all of that kind of thing. But to go into Texas, now it's going to be a little bit more difficult, right? Because he's already got the Texas offer, the Texas A&M offer, a lot of those big schools. And we're seeing them taking some swings at some guys in regions that you kind of hope that they do in order to be able to get to be able to try to reel in a top flight class. So you look even at the other offer they made today, a dual Sanders Jr. out of Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana. He's a 3-star in 2025. I mean, he's in that 4-star range for what will eventually be 4 stars. But they do have one player from Mater Dei, for instance, in Christian Dixon.
Right.
But that's a school where if you can steal away a guy from there that keep them from going to USC, Alabama did that with Bryce Young, who was initially a USC guy, then that really gives you that much more of an opportunity. So they're doing that in Texas, it seems. We're seeing more and more offers into Texas. It's not that they haven't gotten guys from Texas. The Green Twins came from Texas, but they are very rare, and they've done a really good job of dipping into Florida and a little bit into Georgia, and we're still seeing them attacking there. They seem to have this feeling of when things are hot regionally. Right now, North Carolina seems to be that. A couple of years ago, it was Tennessee, and Tennessee still continues to be a place that Michigan's looking. Obviously, they got Mason Curtis in this class, but the last couple of classes, you look at like Cody Jones and some of those others from Tennessee, Miles Pollard. They seem to kind of find those regions that maybe have a lot of talent in 1 or 2 classes in a certain time frame, but they need to be able to make inroads at a place like Texas. Huge state, obviously, but I mean they need to. That's the second, third, depending on the year, most talent-rich state in the country. And Dalen McCutcheon, no relation to also named Dalen McCutcheon, the NFL player. Or I don't know if there's no relation. He's not the son of or anything like that. That was by limited research, but they have to be able to go and get players like that, or at least become players for players like that. I think that's really important.
So Isaiah, this recruiting surge by Michigan, the brand has already been there, the academics, all of that, the tradition, and of course, playing in front of massive crowds, both in the stadium and on television, you know, close to the very top of college football. So that was already in place. This recent surge in recruiting, do you believe that's strictly a byproduct of winning to the extent that they have the last 2 years, or is there another ingredient that's been added?
It's partially the winning aspect, and I think the other important key is that they have a coaching staff that's all in, because if you look back at the beginning of the Jim Harbaugh era back in 2015, it was, hey, they've got Jim Harbaugh, but who's going to recruit? It was Tyrone Wheatley, Jay Harbaugh, and then in 2016, Chris Partridge was elevated from director of recruiting to being an on-field staff member. But a lot of these coaches that they've had over that time, they weren't avid recruiters. They were more coaches, right? All the way back from, I can't remember his name, the safeties coach they brought in from I think he went to the Dallas Cowboys or came from the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, or Mike Zordich, who's now over at one of the Michigan directional schools. Some of these guys that they had long-term, Greg really good recruiter when you got him in the room, but he wasn't necessarily avid outside of that, right? Like he was amazing in the room, but he wasn't necessarily keeping on the board and ways that some of these guys do now. Don Brown, not an avid recruiter. Now you look up and down the roster of coaches, every single guy is capable of going and getting a recruit. And that is a huge difference from what we've seen in the past. Now, some might be a little bit more selective. Mike Hart gotten a little flack from some outlets out there that indicated that maybe he was a little bit lazy, but he's a little bit more selective and also knows that he can develop a guy. And I think that plays a role. But when you see him then able to go out and get a Jordan Marshall, to Michigan is at worst second, but probably leading for Taylor Tatum, another Texas guy. That shows you that Mike Hart, when he finds recruits that he wants, can go out there and get them. But there is not anyone on this current staff that I would say is a guy that's going to hang back. You know, I remember talking to certain people on the coaching staff in years past, and I'd be like, all right, so I talked to this recruit and this is what's going on. And they just kind of be like, oh, okay, my mind's not on recruiting. Whereas now you have a full staff of coaches that recognize that it's crucial. And it's aided even that much more today by the fact that they brought in Bo Schembechler's son, Shemi Schembechler, who's been a longtime NFL scout, to be the assistant director of recruiting. That helps a lot, right? It's not just because of the name, but really, I mean, the repertoire of what he's been able to do. And the fact that they have a mission now to go out there and make sure that they bring in as many top flight guys across the country compared to before, where it seemed like it was a kind of almost an afterthought, right? It was this mentality of Michigan can recruit itself because of its name and its history. And I think that they've learned that that's not really the case in today's college football. Otherwise, I mean, you see a lot of schools able to get some high-end players to their campus. Places like Oregon wouldn't exist. I know Oregon's been a really good recruiter over the last 3 decades or so, thanks to the Nike of it all. But the reason why a place like Oregon stays on the forefront, it has less to do with the history and more due to the fact that they offer amenities that recruits want to see. Michigan isn't short on amenities, but if you don't have people willing to tell them, hey, we have the biggest weight room in the country, and show them the things that they get outside of just playing in front of a big crowd, then you're going to really have a hard time bringing them in just to sit there and say, we're a good school. We have the biggest stadium, come and join us. I think that you couple that with the ability to sell it, plus the ability to win, plus the ability to beat Ohio State, which they've done the last 2 years, those things all in conjunction pay dividends.